United Nations team of experts warns the crisis in Yemen is complex and that the situation is aggravating. Houthi militia continues to block humanitarian aids and deprive millions of Yemenis from access. The joint forces take up fierce fighting against Houthi rebels in different fronts in Hodeidah. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. United Nations group of eminent international and regional experts describe the situation in Yemen being extremely complex. The conflict in the country remains intractable despite persistent international and regional efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement and launch a peace process. The team indicated that conflict parties in Yemen have continued to commit violations of international humanitarian law. Further, the team expressed concern over the state of chaos in the country, which has made it difficult to share information with the panel or even grant consent to the use of data. The new UN envoy to Yemen, Hans Granberg, met with the Kuwaiti permanent representative to discuss peace efforts in the country. The diplomats discussed recent developments of the Yemeni crisis and possibility of Kuwait to push for reviving the peace process in the country. Kuwait, through their ambassador Al-Utaibi, renewed their support for the UN efforts aimed at ending the conflict and reach a comprehensive and lasting peace in Yemen. The war in Yemen seems to have no end. People are suffering on a daily basis due to the humanitarian crisis. What adds to the people problems is Houthis block access of humanitarian aids. This report has more on that story.
Since 2016, Yemen has been in the midst of a civil war. Since that time, it has been called the world's worst humanitarian crisis in recent times, according to the United Nations and other organizations. About 13 million people are facing starvation, and 80% of the country's population, or around 23.2 million, require humanitarian aid. This conflict is destroying the country from all sectors, starting from the infrastructure, schools, roads, bridges, hospitals, and homes. They are regularly hit with bombs, particularly from air raids. This is also causing major human losses. The international community has been doing great efforts to end the conflict in Yemen. This came on the heels of a proposed peace deal in March 2021 from Saudi Arabia, but because of the Houthi rebels, this proposal was rejected. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, 20.7 million people remain in need, including 4 million internally displaced people who need food and nutrition, shelter, and medical support. In response to that, the UN has called for $4 billion in funding to support 20 million people in 2021. Yemeni people keep suffering as millions of internally displaced Yemenis live in makeshift shelters in urban and rural areas. The needs of the Yemeni people are simple. They want to go to the market with enough money to buy food and to educate their children rather than send them to work, fight, beg, or having to marry them off.
The governor of Hodeidah, Dr. Al-Hassan Tahir, met with the representative of the International Red Cross in Taiz's office, Mr. Christopher, and the Deputy Humanitarian Coordinator in Yemen, Diego Zorella, and his accompanying delegation. The meeting addressed the urgent humanitarian situation in the city. A human rights report accused Houthi rebels of planting mines extensively and randomly in the area, which caused severe damage to agricultural lands in the Web district west of Taiz. The report issued by Muwatana Organization, the Gulf Research Center, and the Compliance Foundation for International Rights said that the indiscriminate use of landmines in the region led to the death and injury of cattle, spreading fear among farmers and preventing them from accessing their agricultural lands. The report considered the Houthi militia's acts as a violation of international humanitarian law. Joint forces deterred strikes of Houthi militia in Hais after carefully monitoring movements of the rebels in the area. This is considered a flagrant violation of the Stockholm Agreement. The military media of the joint forces reported that the Iran-backed militia resumed their helpless attempts to set up defenses. In addition, the joint forces launched strikes on the militia rebels, causing losses among them. To Ma'rib, where the government forces inflicted the rebels with heavy casualties in El Qasara front. A military source said that the government forces backed by tribes have clashed with the militia rebels and caused them losses in lives and equipment. Houthi militias' non-stop bombing and violations towards the Yemenis has caused a huge displacement problem in Yemen, especially in Ma'rib. The following report has more details on this issue. The number of displaced families from the south of Ma'rib due to the Houthi militias' bombing of the Rahaba district center has risen to 261 families, in addition to the destruction of public and private homes and facilities. The executive unit for managing the camps for the displaced in Ma'rib said that the number of displaced families during the past 2 days has risen to 261 families, which are equal to 1,827 people. The unit's monitoring and documentation team in the city also monitored civilian casualties, in addition to the destruction of a number of homes and public and private facilities, and the injury of a number of innocent people, including dead and wounded. She stated that her team monitored grave violations carried out by the Houthi militia against the displaced and the host community in Rahaba, southwest of Ma'rib, which was subjected to systematic and deliberate bombing by the Houthis, which resulted in casualties among the displaced and the host community and the destruction of their properties and homes. The unit said that the intense indiscriminate bombing of the Houthi militia in Rahaba is still going on, which leads to the continued displacement of families residing in the targeted villages in the district. According to the unit, the families that fled to the Nab'a area and were displaced within the district are 85 families. 55 from Jabal Murad, 62 families from Ma'rib, 42 from El Juba, and 17 from Harib. The Houthi shelling with missiles and drones on residential areas led to the burning and destruction of 28 houses, killing 2 civilians, including a 75-year-old, and wounding 9, including 5 women and a child. The bombing of the areas of displaced people and civilians also resulted in the killing of 2 civilians and the injury of 12, including 4 women. The unit demanded the prosecution of violators of the rights of the displaced and their inclusion in the lists of war criminals, and the issuance of fair sentences against the violators of the rights of the displaced. It also called for compensating the displaced in their right to life, property, and personal belongings, and protecting the displaced from any other violations that might be committed against them. Coming next. Houthis concealed real information about COVID-19 pandemic amid fears of third wave spread.
ثالث على منطقة الروضة استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع. بيدعي للسلام يقولوا للسلام يقتل أطفالنا يقتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت استجعت ولا قلنا يقع واحد صاروخ ثاني. طلعت البيت حقنا. عشان ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ الطرح.
Sources in the Electricity Corporation in the city of Aden said that the electric current went out of service after most of the generating stations in the country's temporary capital ran out of fuel. The sources added that the emergency fuel that was pumped into the power stations at the beginning of this week ran out, while appeals to the government are not yet responded to. Most public service sectors have been affected by war. Aden is facing an increased insufficient water issue. People are having hard life due to this. The following report has more details on this story.
Water services provided by Aden Water Corporation is insufficient to meet the needs of people. Poor performance of water pumps led to life difficulties, especially in mountain areas such as Sha'b al-Aidarus. Some people were forced to fill water through private water providers, where it exceeds $10 for a single refill. This considered a burden due to difficult economic conditions.
لنا 5 سنين أو 6 سنين وما قبل نعاني من شحة المياه.
For more than 6 years, we've been suffering from water scarcity, as we have to buy water with large sums of money. Water reaches some areas and some areas do not reach them at all. We demand compensation. Also, salaries are not paid and prices are rising. We do not have the financial ability to cover our basic needs.
Citizens tend to use outdated methods to get few liters. This child gets up early in the morning to get his usual share of water from mosques and return back on the back of his donkey. Yet, those who do not get up early to catch up their chairs need to buy water from private water providers.
When we have no money, we have to fill water in the early morning from public tanks in the regions and mosques.
The non-constant flow of water in the pipes in a number of areas does not mean the end of the problem. Citizens await water pumps to fill home water tanks. This makes them in a state of constant monitoring as a result of the irregular pumping process. According to citizens, suitable actions are required.
We have been suffering from water cuts for more than 4 years. We use donkeys as means of transporting water. We ask to consider our case, cooperate with us and save our youth.
The water crisis caused death. Disputes occur between neighborhoods due to using high-powered pumps that draw water to areas and weaken it from other areas. This requires intervention of authorities to find solutions and end disputes.
In the neighboring areas, when there is water, they use high-powered pumps and draw the water completely to their areas. This caused conflicts between us. 5 people died due to water problems and the conflicts that occur because of water. We want a solution that satisfies everyone and ends the suffering.
Water have been out for years. We don't have a single water drop. My husband passed away while he was trying to collect water.
The water crisis is added to other problems such as electricity and the scarcity of oil products. People of Aden hope the Riyadh agreement will end conflict between parties as to help citizens who are suffering hardship, economic crisis and the deterioration of basic services.
Emergency Committee approved the package of measures to confront the third wave of the coronavirus that Yemen is currently witnessing. During its meeting, the committee directed the suspension of official group activities, events, and instructed local authorities to take the necessary measures to limit gatherings and social events and raise the level of awareness among citizens. The committee discussed the possibility of opening new isolation centers, providing medical and preventive supplies, and fostering more coordination with international organizations to provide the required needs. Further, Education Office in Aden was reported to suspend regular studies in the university next Sunday due to the outbreak of a third wave of the pandemic. The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 37 new cases of the COVID-19 in 6 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 11 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 9 in Al Bayda, 9 in Ma'rib, 5 in Aden, 2 in Dala, and 1 in Shabwa. Also, 8 deaths were recorded, plus 32 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 1,267, including 1,549 deaths and 5,119 cases of recovery. While the entire world has been trying to combat COVID-19, Houthi rebels continue to conceal reality of the pandemic. Many people have died with no single action taken by the rebels' authorities. This report has more details on this.
The Emergency Committee of the Yemeni government announced that it had recorded the highest daily death toll from the emerging coronavirus in its regions, bringing the cumulative total number of cases to more than 7,000 cases as part of the third wave sweeping the country. However, international reports say otherwise. A few days ago, the American Associated Press published a report on the extent of the outbreak of the corona pandemic in northern Yemen and said that Houthi-controlled areas are witnessing a third outbreak. while the group's authorities are dealing with the epidemic with frank denial to the extent that this denial threatens greater risk to the already vulnerable population. Doctors say they are forced to falsify the cause of death on official papers. Vaccinations are viewed with fear, and there are no limits or guidelines on public gatherings or funerals. Human rights organizations and Doctors Without Borders have previously talked about the outbreak of corona in northern Yemen and the dangers of the Houthi authorities continuing to deny the pandemic and endangering the lives of the medical staff. The Houthis decided that they wouldn't announce the infected cases and that they would only announce the recovered under the justification that they do not want to cause panic among the population in the areas under their control. But this justification had a significant impact on finding a quick and appropriate incubator for the spread of the virus, which led to an explosion in the number of cases, especially in Sana'a, which is densely populated. In view of the Houthi militia's policy of concealing the reality of the epidemic, the only source to know the true death from the virus are the grave diggers, because it's the most segment that knows and notices the increase in the number of dead. The militia rebels have seized the phones of all the doctors of Al-Thawra governmental hospital in Sana'a under the pretext of preventing them from filming corona cases in the hospital, intimidating them by refraining from talking about the epidemic. Further, the rebels prevented journalists and news channels from visiting Zayed Hospital and Kuwait Hospital in Sana'a. The Houthis consider disclosing information about coronavirus cases in Sana'a a crime of national security and treason that may lead to execution. Doctors said that the Houthi militia is forcing them to mix with patients in emergency departments without any protective clothing from the virus or safety measures for patients, as in all hospitals in the world. This made some medical staff stop working. Sources at the United Nations said that the Houthis are withholding the results of the tests and sending the World Health Organization to those whose tests results are negative and not infected. Such inhuman acts by Houthis refrained many infected people from going to hospitals or informing anyone, for fear, as this is considered criminal conduct with 3 years prison as punishment. All what Yemenis are asking for is their basic rights to live safely in their own country. Is it too much to ask for?
The central bank asked all exchange companies and financial transfer networks to suspend sale and purchase of foreign currencies amid the new historical collapse of the Yemeni rial. According to sources, the Yemeni rial has lost its value against the foreign currency. Exchange companies in Aden created a new black market to buy foreign currencies from citizens. According to eyewitnesses, foreign currencies are bought and sold in Aden in food stores, bookstores, pharmacies, and others amid absence of regulators. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. United Nations team of experts warns the crisis in Yemen is complex and that the situation is aggravating. Houthi militia continues to block humanitarian aids and deprive millions of Yemenis from access. The joint forces take up fierce fighting against Houthi rebels in different fronts in Hodeidah. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. See you soon.